Hi, this is Alicia Bowling with Creative Laughter TV Beyond Logic podcast. Today our guest is a psychic medium from the UK. He's only 26 years old and has already decided what he wants to do in the metaphysical world. He wants to be a spiritualist, helping people deal with their grief and their loss of their loved ones. It's my pleasure to welcome Aaron Naughton to the show. Hi, Aaron.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome, welcome. You're my first overseas guy. Yay! So I'm excited to talk to you because I like that there's psychics all around the world, and people, who just live in one area, they think that's all they have, but there's just so much. So tell everybody what it was like growing up in England and, what it was like being a psychic kid.
Well, for me, when I was younger, being a sort of a psychic kid, being able to be aware of people's energy was quite trying at times. I mean, when I was younger, I discovered sort of spirit around the age of 5 years old, I would say. I used to be able to sense them, and I used to be able to sometimes see them. And it was pretty scary, to be honest, because, as a 5-year-old, you're not sure what's going on. I remember sort of as a child sort of being in bed and my toys sort of just suddenly playing by themselves and having to try and find which toy it is that's going, take the batteries out, and it would still keep on going through the night.
Wow, that has to be crazy frightening.
It was. I really didn't understand what was going on, and I used to have a lot of experiences like that. And I used to see this man in my house that I remember used to calling him the man with the green eyes, and it used to really scare me. And I would go to my mum and I would go to my parents and things and say what I was seeing. And my dad was very much, it's your imagination, you're not really experiencing this. And my mum would just turn around and give what I believe now to be the right answer, but it didn't make sense as a child, but she would say, just tell them to go away and leave you alone. Now, that is what you need to do if spirit are bothering you. But actually, it's pretty scary as a 5-year-old because you don't understand that.
That's funny. I've actually heard that before, that if there's something, when my sister had passed away, it frightened me terribly. And somebody had mentioned that she's coming towards you, she's sitting down in a chair, and I said, no, tell her to go away. I'm scared. And she goes, no, you have to tell her. So that's interesting you said that.
Yeah, it's true, because spirits aren't there to scare us. They don't want to frighten us. They're not pulling you out of your bed in the middle of the night or things like that. They're our loved ones. They're our friends and family. They just want to let us know that they're safe and sound and that they're still watching over us. So if you turn around to them and say, hey, you're freaking me out, they'll go, oh, I'm sorry. Let me try something else.
Well, do you feel there are evil spirits? There are the ones that are more trying and spooky, or do you feel all spirits are good?
I believe that a lot of spirits are human, and I believe that humans can be either good or bad or a mixture of both. I don't believe in demons. I don't think there's like demons coming in and possessing people and things like that. But I do believe that there are some spirits who were not very nice when they were alive, so they're not going to be very nice when they've passed either.
That's super funny. I can see that. Interesting. So do you come from a psychic family? Is your mother and father psychic?
I do. See, my father was brought up as a Catholic, so he wasn't into it. He didn't believe in it. But my mother, on the other hand, she's a practicing medium, and her father was a practicing medium as well. And his parents were also practicing mediums. In fact, they were spiritualist ministers, and they had their own spiritualist church, which still runs to this day. And so it's been in my family generation upon generation. It was just, as I said, when I went to my mum with the sort of the spooky happenings, she gave me the right spiritualist answer, but she didn't go into too much detail, which I was fortunate later on in life that I was able to explore that in a little bit more depth with her when I became more of an age where I could understand.
So what was this like in school for you?
In school, it was difficult. When I first started discovering it, so I was about 13, 14, around that sort of age. And when I first started discovering it, I was excited about it, as you can imagine. I wanted to share it with my friends and talk about it. And some of my friends were really open about it and they were okay. But there were some people who were skeptics, and there were some people that just thought I was plain weird, and they shut me out, or they sort of ridiculed me or whatever. And I ended up having to kind of be a bit of a closet case medium, to be honest, and keep that secret, keep that side of my life secret, because I was almost bullied for it as well by some children, and it wasn't easy. And it was especially difficult because I was sensitive to these people's energies. I was sensitive to my friends. And sometimes I would just say something and my friends would go, how on earth did you know that? Where did that come from? And trying to explain that was difficult.
Oh, I can only imagine. So how was it going to school, like taking tests and stuff? Did Spirit give you answers? Did you feel like you got a little help from the other side? Or they're kind of like, nah, you got to do this on your own?
I wish. I wish big time. I mean, I've returned to university as a mature student, and I wish they gave me the answers, because that would make my life so much easier. Actually, funnily enough, I've even been to the lottery machine and gone, come on then, give me the numbers.
Oh my God. That's hysterical.
And I tell you what, the times when I have asked for help from the lottery are the times when I've not had a single number come up, because Spirit go, hey, that's not our job. We're not here to help you. You've got to do it yourself. So no, they're not very helpful when it comes to tests.
Oh, that's so funny. So what was it like dating? Like as you got older, was that weird? Did you like sit across the table from someone and say, you're a cheater? Was that like hard for you?
Well, it was quite hard. I mean, as I said, I was a bit of a closet case when it came to my mediumship. And when I grew older, I thought, well, is this something that I want my date to find out sort of later on and kind of discover for themselves? Or should I just be upfront and honest? And I thought, well, it's a huge important part of my life. It's something that I dedicate my life to. So I decided to be upfront and be open about it. And some people thought it was a bit strange, but they would still date me anyway. And you're right, Alicia. Sometimes there were moments where I thought, this isn't going to go well. But my problem is I'm too much of a romantic. I want things to go well. So even though I felt it and I thought, there was one person, and I won't name names, but there was one person who I just knew was going to be a cheat. But I didn't want to believe it. So I just kept on with it, and the relationship didn't work out. And I still to this day believe that he cheated on me. And it was hard. It was hard until I found the right one.
Yeah, what's with us and those red flags? Like we see those red flags and we're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Exactly.
And we know what's coming down the pike, but we do it anyway. Like it's so weird. Well, I find it amazing. When we had talked before, you told me at 13, you knew what it was. And your first private readings were like at 14, 15. That's crazy.
That's right, yes. Because my mum was talking about it one day, and she was telling a story to my sister, in fact, who's quite a lot older than me. And she was saying about how there was a spirit who was in her house. And every morning she would wake up and she would come downstairs, and all the interior doors in her house were open, be it cupboards, be it doors, whatever. They were all just wide open. And she decided to hold a seance in her house. And with a group that she was a part of at the time, and they all came around the house, and they kind of sat around in a circle and invited Spirit in. When somebody in the circle had gone into what we call trance, which is when your spirit or your soul takes a slight side step out of your body, and another entity comes in and kind of takes over for a short period of time, and they can talk and communicate and move around for that moment of time. And this person came through from the world of spirit, and they pointed at my mother's lap and went, Satan! And my mum thought, I hope not.
Who the hell agreed to do that? Oh my God.
Well, it turned out Satan was actually the name of a cat who was on the spirit side and was sat in my mum's lap at the time. And the person that had come through was somebody who had passed over and hadn't realized that they had passed over. So they were kind of looking through the cupboards trying to find their possessions and couldn't find them. Now, the group as a whole informed this spirit that it was their time to pass over, it was their time to move on, and helped them transition properly, and that the problem stopped as a whole. whole. Now, when I was hearing this story as a 13-year-old, I was amazed. I was like, what's this? And I had so many questions. And my mum invited me along to the church, and I started getting more and more involved, and I started developing more. And you're right, I did my first reading at, I think I was 14, 15. And it was only a test thing. My mum was doing a fair at the time where she was selling crystals and jewelry and things. And she says, well, why don't we just put a little sign up and say, experimental readings for £3, nothing. And I said, all right, then we'll give it a try. And I had the longest queue out of everybody that day. And I was giving reading after reading after reading, and it was draining, it was exhausting. But I remember thinking at the time how exhilarating that was, being able to pass on that information to people who needed it.
Wow, here in the States, we have lemonade stands. That's how our kids make money at 13. So are you familiar with a Hollywood medium?
I am, yes.
And so that kid's only 19.
Right.
Or started when he was 19. What do you think of him as a psychic?
I've seen some of his work, actually, because here in the UK, we get some of your shows. And I think I was watching him give a reading to Ellen DeGeneres. And I just thought the way that he gave the message was so full of compassion. And what I think about most mediums of our age and our generation is that there's a lot of criticism about us being constantly on technology and not being connected with the real world. But when you work with spirit and you work with psychic energy, you're not just sort of in the real world, you're also in a spiritual world as well. So it's a complete different sort of vibration, I think. It comes from a different place. Mediumship and psychic ability is evolving into something new. And the Hollywood medium, I think he's sort of a whole image of that himself, and I think he really gives that across very sincerely and very compassionately. And it was a joy to watch, actually.
Oh, good. So he's kind of like an inspiration for all the millennials.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, because there actually are so many millennial psychics. And the truth is, all this modern day technology stuff, Instagram, all this kind of stuff, it just gets you in trouble. I mean, I always say the only thing I like about being old, and let me just make sure you understand, the only thing I like about being old is the fact that you have no recollection of anything I did in the past. You can't come at me for anything. So that's the good news. So Spirit's doing you a favor by keeping you out. So, I know your father ran a mentoring school, and he was a huge part of your development and growth. Tell everybody about that.
That was my grandfather. Yes, he was actually the president of the Spiritualist church that I grew up in for some time, and he held a class every week. There was an open class where anybody could come along, and there was a closed one as well. I went along to the open one at quite a young age. Ordinarily at that time, if you were under the age of 16, you weren't allowed to be involved in those classes. And if you were under the age of 18, so if you were 16 or 17, you had to have parental guidance and you had to have permission and things. Because my grandfather was the president of the church, there was a few rules bent there, really. They weren't broken, they were bent. So I was allowed into the class, and I was able to just sort of observe. And I remember sort of after a couple of them, I ended up giving a very, very short reading, as it was a sort of an experimental thing to kind of see what we could pick up. I didn't think I could pick up anything, but I just gave whatever came into my head, and I just said whatever I felt and whatever I saw, and somehow by some miracle the person in front of me understood everything in which I was saying, which was just amazing for me. It just opened up this whole new world. And I progressed eventually to the closed class where you had to be invited. And once again, my grandfather said, look, because it's a closed class, a lot more sort of in-depth things go on. You're going to have to sit on the outside and not be a part of it. And I turned up for my first day, and he gave me a seat inside the class and just let me sort of be there. But the world of spirit kind of kept a very, very close, watchful eye on me, and made sure I didn't sort of get into any trouble and didn't get too involved. But I was able to observe and learn. And my grandfather was a huge mentor for me. He answered so many of my questions, and he was a huge support for me for discovering this side of my life.
Well, you call yourself a spiritualist. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that when you say that?
Well, as a spiritualist, in the UK, actually, spiritualism is actually a recognized religion. it's a movement it's governed by the Spiritualist National Union. And as a spiritualist, I believe that I have the ability to connect to the world of spirit and to communicate with them. And it's more of a way of life rather than a party trick, or rather than sort of like a job or anything like that. It's a way of life. It's I wouldn't want to call it a religion per se, although it is. I don't see it as that. I see it more as a belief and as a following. So it's having that connection and having that communication with those who have departed and those in the higher realms, be it you want to name that God or the universe or what have you, but being able to connect with that energy.
Well, you know, England is fantastic because you have all those castles, and I mean, even Ireland. I mean, the culture there and the construction of your buildings, and there's so many ghosts and great stories. Do you have any wonderful stories to tell of an experience possibly you had on a field trip to a cool castle, or are they all haunted, or is that just a myth we like to think over here in the States? We're making it up over here.
I very much believe sort of old buildings can hold a residual energy. So I believe there's a difference between a ghost and a spirit. So I think a ghost is an energy that is sort of within the environment, and it's almost like, for me, I see it as like a broken record. So you'll see that energy replay a certain bit time and time again, and people recount stories of when they see a spirit emerge from a wall and then they go through another wall, and it happens every day at 17 minutes past 4 or what have you. And that, I believe, is what I would call a ghost. And then you have spirits who are living beings who can communicate with you from the next world. And I believe there's definitely many ghosts within the castles, because there's so much energy there. And I mean, there aren't as many castles as you may believe, but there are a few, and just going into a castle you can feel that energy. There's one I went to recently, Alnwick Castle, and it's sort of in Northumberland way, and it's where they filmed Harry Potter, the first couple of films actually. When you see the Quidditch sort of lesson and things, that's this castle, and it's just such a beautiful place, and it has such a wonderful energy about it. It really, really does.
Well, do you know who Michelle White Dove is?
It's not a name I know of, no.
Well, she's a psychic here in the States who won Best American Psychic Challenge. And she had gone to this one castle and down in the basement. And she said that she just started to cry and felt all this emotion because she felt it was a chambers where slaves were.
Yes.
And she felt all the horrible things that were happening to them. And it just kind of consumed her body. Does that type of thing happen to you when you enter into a place like possibly where there was a tragic murder or mass murders or whatever like that?
It can do. When you develop as a medium or as a psychic, you are taught how to give yourself protection and how to stop that from overwhelming you, because it can be overwhelming, and that definitely can happen. And sometimes it's caught me completely unawares, where I've gone somewhere and I've just felt this amount of emotion come through, and I don't know where it belongs or why I'm feeling it, or who even has that emotion for me to be feeling that, and it can be quite intense. In fact, I suffer a bit with anxiety, and I believe that's because when I'm in a group and I'm in a crowded place or within a group of people, I feel a lot of energy all at once, and that can have a huge impact on me. I have done a few things where I've done investigations. So I've gone to like haunted places, and I went to one place called the Jenner Museum. It's in Berkeley, and I was invited along to be the medium for this event, and I just knew straight away when I was there that something had gone on that wasn't perhaps very pleasant. I believe there was a murder that had happened there. And I turned around to the staff and I said, has there been a murder? Because I can sense a murder here. And the member of staff said, oh, I don't know. She said the building is very, very old, before even Edward Jenner took over the house. She says, so there could have been anything happen, but perhaps you're feeling something from the castle across the way. And I said, no, it's definitely within this property. And as we went throughout the property, somebody who wasn't even around me at the time and didn't even hear about me feeling the murder, she was walking up the stairs and she felt that somebody was going to come up and push her over the stairs. And she said she felt like somebody had been completely thrown down the stairs and it had been made to look like an accident. And actually it was a murder. It was with intent. And when I was picking up this murder, I felt that there was perhaps some confusion around it, that perhaps it wasn't so clear that it was a murder, that it may have looked like an accident. And this other person who was nothing to do with me had also experienced that as well. And we just felt that, and we just felt that negativity and that fear and that concern. So it definitely does happen. But when it does happen, and if it becomes overwhelming, you do need to kind of put your protection up and say, hang on a minute, I can't have this take full control of me.
So do you believe that if there is this negative energy coming around you, I hear a lot of psychics say, if you just put a white light around you and, kind of like release that, do you feel that that's a protection for you, or that's not necessary?
Yes, precisely. That's what I'll use in it's my emergency sort of repair kit, if you want to call it that.
Psychic emergency repair kit. I like that.
Yeah. So if I experience something, for a lot of people, they use white lights. For me, I put around me one-way mirrors that I can see outwards, but if anything negative is on the outside, the energy will just bounce off and go off into a different direction, but I can still see outside of the mirrors, and I kind of see it like a tube that goes around me. So that's my protection. Some people have a cloak, and they'll put a cloak on them and put their hood up, and that's protection for them. It doesn't have to be a white light, or it doesn't have to be angel wings coming around you. It just has to be that thought, that intent that I am now blocking myself off and I wish to have protection from this. And your guides in the spirit world and your helpers will come in, and they will look after you and make sure that boundary is respected, really. Most of the time, my guides and my helpers know when is appropriate to communicate with me and when's not. So, if I'm out on a night out or whatever, which doesn't happen very often, I must admit I'm a boring person. But if I'm going down to like the local pub or something like that, then that's not appropriate for spirit to come in, so they won't. But it is appropriate if I'm doing a one-to-one reading, or if I'm doing a platform demonstration or something like that, and then they will come in. But as I said, sometimes it does catch me at unawares, and that's when I'll use my emergency repair kit.
So what do you think about these kids that are like purchasing Ouija boards as a fun game, or doing all these weird kind of, seance-y type things, calling people down? Do you think that's dangerous?
I do, actually, yes. I think if you meddle with things you don't understand, and if you get involved with things that you don't know how to control, it could be dangerous, absolutely. Because as I said, I don't believe in demons. You're not going to have like the devil himself come and sort of take over a 14-year-old kid whose biggest problem in life is whether or not they've done their homework or not. There's no such thing as that. But I do believe there are some people in the world of spirit who may not have the best intentions, and they might suddenly want to get involved in someone's life and play a few tricks and be unkind. And if you don't know what you're doing, that could be dangerous, and that could be, in some cases, catastrophic. And there have been cases when I've been involved in situations when somebody has experienced something like that, where they've dabbled with Ouija boards and they've dabbled with things they don't know, and they've got themselves into a difficult situation, and I've had to kind of help them and almost detach the spirit from their energy. So I think whenever I've heard of any children doing it, or when I was at school and my classmates were playing with Ouija boards, I always tried to dissuade them from it.
Right. Because, kids are crazy that way.
Mm-hmm.
So how do your readings exactly work? What can people expect from your readings?
Well, it depends, really. I mean, some people come to me for a face-to-face reading. So they'll be in person, sat in front of me. And sometimes I give readings sort of absently. So I can connect with somebody, even if I'm on the opposite side of the world, and I can do it through the phone or through Skype or whatever. And it's slightly different. So when you're face-to-face, I will sort of sit down with you and I'll tell you what to expect, because quite often spirit with me, they show themselves to me in physical form, so I can see them physically stood in front of me, and they can speak to me physically as well, which I prefer because it makes my life easy. I don't have to work as hard when I can just say, hey, there's this person stood here and they're saying this. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes though, it's like they give me a feeling of their personality and who they were when they were on this side, and sometimes they don't even communicate that way, and they use symbols and imagery with me, and I feel like I'm playing charades a bit because I'm like, oh, what is this symbol?
That's funny. It is kind of like a game of that charades. You're right. That's funny.
I just tell whoever I'm giving a reading to, I just tell them everything I see, everything I sense, everything I feel, because there may be something that spirit does to me that I think is unimportant or nonsensical or whatever, but actually the person in front of me, that's the exact thing they're wanting to hear from me. So I just tell them everything and just hope that it makes sense.
So with your readings, is there a difference between different classes where they're from? Like if you read me, I'm loud, I'm from America, to reading someone in England, is there a difference in the type of readings and the way it feels for you to read?
Not exactly. I do feel there is a difference for the spirits that come in. It doesn't make a difference as the person who sat in front of me, but the person who comes through from spirit, because there's so many different personality types. It can sometimes be difficult or sometimes be easier to work with. I have had spirits that have come through that just pure don't like me and don't really want to talk to me, and I've kind of got to work with that. Yep. And I've had some spirits that have come in and have been just like you, Alicia, loud and sort of
what really, are you trying to say there, Aaron?
Nothing at all. But they can be really extrovert, and I tell you what, that makes a reading so much easier. And sometimes it does have an impact. I don't think class has an impact, but if a person's personality is a lot more open and a lot more sort of open-minded and welcoming, that can be very helpful for a medium. A lot of people can sort of say, oh yeah, but he's just reading body language. I try not to look at the person I'm giving a reading to for a start, and I also ask people not to give me information, to just tell me if they understand or not. But if people are much more open and a lot more welcoming, that is an easier connection for me than somebody that's closed off, because at the end of the day, spirit will respect your privacy. And if you don't want me to know something, I'm not going to know it.
That's interesting. The reason why I brought up the class thing is because, for 26 years old, you're very compassionate. I mean, the fact that you donate your time to people who don't have money into the church, I want you to tell everybody about that, because, there's not a lot of young people, spiritual or not, who don't have that type of compassion. So that's why I asked you if it's different to read someone who absolutely doesn't have the money, but really needs a guidance, to someone who can pop you $1,000 and just wants to know how their business is going to be.
Usually people who don't have a lot of money, if they're paying for a reading with me, you'll find that they're much more, as I said, they're more of the person who's more open and more welcoming, because they're there for a reason. They want to have that reading. Whereas somebody who's got the cash to spend and just sort of fritter it away, they can sometimes see it it's almost like they don't take it as seriously. I've had people come along where they think it's a joke or a bit of fun or a bit of a laugh. And for some people that may be, but I take my work very seriously. So if I have somebody that's saved up every penny for the last few months, whatever, to have this reading, you'll find that you can connect with them on a much deeper level, because they're wanting that or they're needing that. And for me, as I said, for me, my work with spirit and as a medium isn't necessarily a job or a career, and I don't see it as such. It's just my life. It's my way of life. So I do offer sort of private readings where people come and they pay for my time, because bills need to be paid and all of that. I need to
Absolutely.
eat. But I also want to be available to everybody, because my work isn't just about taking money. It's about being able to connect those who have passed with us who are still left behind. So I go around to my local spiritualist churches. Well, I say local. I go nationwide, really. I go to spiritual churches within Wales and down to the southwest and here in the northeast where I live. And I go along to them almost every week, where I give a philosophy, usually a short talk on spiritualism and my views on those who have passed. And then I will give a demonstration of mediumship for about an hour, where I'll pick out people and they'll get sort of 5-10 minutes per person, or actually most of the time with me I'm too much of a chatterbox, so it's more like 10-15 minutes. But I will give that message to people, and usually these churches, they either ask for a very small entrance fee, but the majority of them it's just donation only. So give what you can, and if you don't give, that's fine too. So I want to be able to give my time to those who don't have the money but still need that connection from their loved ones.
That's lovely. And I know you also tell everybody about the Macmillan Cancer Center. I know that's something dear to your heart. So I want to make sure people know about this, and if they can donate, where they can donate, or what's the whole thing with this?
It is. I mean, Macmillan Cancer Support are a charity here in the UK, and their whole purpose is to help those that have been diagnosed with cancer. But it's not just those who are diagnosed with cancer, it's their families and their friends who are affected by it too, which surprised me actually, because my partner was diagnosed with cancer in 2014. And when I phoned up Macmillan for their support and their advice, I said, well, it's not me with the cancer. I said, it's my partner. So I just wanted to just kind of get a bearing as to what you can offer and what you can do to help me. And I'll just give him, your phone number. And they said, no, Aaron. They said, just give us your details. We want to hear from you. We're here for you. If you phone up, we'll be here to support you. If your partner phones up, we'll support him as well. And they were so supportive throughout that whole time, from giving us a grant to get through. They communicated with our electric and gas company to reduce our bills, because I don't know if you know, but patients who have cancer, they can't feel warmth as normal people do. So the heating normally has to be sky high. So the bills are a lot more expensive. And they communicated with them to reduce our bills. And not only that, they had nurses on the phone on call whenever we needed them to. So my partner had Hodgkin's lymphoma and he was unable to eat certain cheeses. And we went to our local supermarket one day and we were looking at the cheeses and we were thinking, right, let's make a lasagna. And there was one cheese we weren't sure whether it counted for safe or unsafe. So I phoned up Macmillan and they got a nurse on the phone for me straight away. I'm in the shop and the nurse just came on the phone and gave us the information. It was amazing. And they were so supportive. And my partner, thankfully, has been in remission and has been discharged and is completely cancer-free now. But I wanted to give back because they gave so much to us. So I held a charity event 2 years ago where I had a clairvoyant evening and I asked for a charge on the door plus any more if you can. I held a raffle, I asked for donations, and we raised £750 for them, and I wasn't expecting to even get £300, so it was amazing.
Wow.
To be able to give back to them, because they are a true support. So if anybody can donate to them, they are a lifeline for those that have been diagnosed with cancer, and they get very, very little government funding. Most of their funding comes from donations. So if you can, please visit their website. It's macmillan.org.
Oh, that's lovely. And you're lovely. I am so glad you came on the podcast. I get very excited when young millennial people like you really are inspiring the world and are going to change things. And with the world we're living in today, we need the millennials to step up. So thank you. And I would love to check in with you again if you'd like.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for your kind words. And thank you for having me on your podcast. It has been a blast.
And by the way, Aaron's website right now is under construction, but you have to check him out. Just keep checking to see when his website's up, to book a reading and find out more about him. It's www.aaronthemedium.com. Also, don't forget to go to our website and check out our Psychics of the Month and our group sessions. And remember, you create your life, you create your future. This is Alicia Bowling with Beyond Logic.